Oh, why hello there. Just doing a little light reading this week. As always, let's talk what is new on the Kickstarter board game scene, what has launched, what should you be aware of, where are things at, and, let's throw a little bit of salt and pepper of my opinion in there as well. So, I wasn't kidding when I said that the end of May was going to come in like a storm. If you weren't watching on Tuesday, there was just a plethora, an overload of stuff. Stuff that I knew about, stuff that we didn't know about, reception across the board. It's super interesting to watch, at least from my perspective. So, what's out there? What should you know about? What's looking interesting to you this week? As always, let's run through as many as we can in the shortest amount of time possible with giving you the most information at the same time. And, if you're new, I'm doing these in chronological order. Means, you know what? As much as you want to hear The Witcher right at the beginning, I'm running it down from the ones that have launched the earliest to the most recent up until the time of this being posted. So, The Witcher, it's going to be right there in the middle, along with a lot of other stuff. So, as always, thanks for watching. Let's do this. Okay, deep breath. Let's do this. Spintronics. This launched at the very end of last week, right before I posted the video, so I wasn't able to include it last week. It is 10 times its funding goal already, $780,000. This is basically building mechanical circuits taken to the board game where you get to play basically as an engineer. So that is what this is in the gist of things. They mention it in the terms of, voltage, current, building electricity, mimicking electrons in terms of chains instead of, something that you can't visibly see or that is not tangible. And that is what they're doing in terms of making these puzzles that you are putting together in a very physical, dexterity-based manner. So you're building these crazy contraptions in order to, achieve a certain endpoint in terms of the puzzles. And they each come with a ton of puzzles. 60 puzzles, 120 pages in the core pledge alone. You get these resistors and base tiles, chain links, all of that stuff. I'm a science nerd, right? But I am not physics, and I was never hands-on. So, chemistry was my thing, not engineering. So this has absolutely no appeal to me, but this is something that is a very intriguing, completely off the wall, different thing than we've seen out there. And I think it's being shown that people are interested in something like this. Now again, the idea of this is really appealing. However, this is also something I could see myself never getting played or never having interest in unless my kids showed an interest in this in general, and my kids aren't old enough. So I think just from that side of things, I know that this is not something for me. The other thing you have to be aware of, this price point is relatively significant, $74. Now, again, like I said, you're getting like 60 puzzles. So there is a lot of content for your money. And then they have an Act 2, which is more of the advanced puzzles, again, with 60 puzzles in that one as well. The Power Pack expansion. But this is, this is expensive. This is what it is. You're getting high quality components, hopefully, and you are paying for what you're getting. So for the price that it is, with the amount of content and the components that you're getting, I think it's a relatively good deal. I don't think there's any question about that. It's just, I have absolutely no interest in it. You can see that, this is real life, real application, science, engineering, put to the test, made into a game on the table. But like I mentioned, the electrical currents, that was never appealing to me. Puzzles in general aren't terribly appealing to me. And so from that side of things, you really need to know what you're getting yourself into. This is not like just kind of do whatever you want. This is, you're going to solve these puzzles, you're going to try and do them. It's going to be that sort of thing. So as long as you know what you're getting into, I think it's a relatively safe bet. But again, knowing the idea of things versus your own practicality of things, I think is the big differentiation for me in this one. So that's why it's an easy pass. But like I said, it's something that you're never going to see on Kickstarter, in the near future again. So if it's of interest to you, check it out. Now we skip over to this very interesting game called, I'm assuming it's ADELE, ADELE, however you want to pronounce it. So this is a very interesting concept, and it's already 3 times its funding goal, which is relatively impressive, again, for one that showed up out of nowhere in terms of not knowing about it in the first place before it launched. it is a 1v all space terror-ish game. Now tell me if you've heard that theme before, right? However, this is different in the sense that you are battling against the AI. So one person is the AI, the rest of the people are the crew members trying to either escape or disconnect the AI in order to win. Now, the tricky part is in this sort of hidden movement, deduction-esque style 1v all game is that you have very limited information with each person because you're trying to bring one of a certain element collection item to a certain room, but you only know where one item is, and it might be more of something else that someone else needs to get rather than what you need to get. So you have to figure out how to communicate to them without, I'm assuming, non-verbally or through the gameplay actions rather than just saying, "Hey Jim, your thing's over there." No. So this is what you're getting here. You see the console that is for the AI. You see the ship in terms of where you're going to be moving, the crew members, all of your pieces and puzzles. And they give you an overview video that kind of goes through it. But the one thing I really wanted to see when I was looking at this page earlier today was I did not see a rulebook on here because I think some of the detailed nuance with a game like this is what I want to see. Like, how balanced is this? What is it going to look like? How does the gameplay actually entail? And now, I know a gameplay video is going to be a little bit harder on a 1v all, so like, I'm not surprised that they don't have like a gameplay walkthrough in terms of that, but give me a rulebook so I can at least see how some of the mechanics intertwine and connect, so I can get a better determination of how random is this, how tactical is this, how strategic is this, what is the level of interaction between the players, how do the turns go. I don't get a great sense with some of these other descriptions. I mean, there's general, overview sort of stuff, which is again, is fine, but there's not a whole lot there that tells me more about the game. So that is really what I would like to see. And I mean, it looks like a solid project, but again, with all of the stuff launching, with so much competing for our, nowadays, I can't not have at least one of those, if not both. Now, I'm not going to make it a requirement because, as I've said previously, like, people were complaining online on the board game Twitter, like, requiring all of these things is pricing indie developers out, and you can't have 6 previews, and you can have plenty of video. There are plenty of people like me that are out there that are willing to do these free videos, or plenty of other people that are willing to put it on their channel and give it a quality representation. So you're not even having to pay a lot of the time. Now, if you really want a big channel audience, but if you just want video to attract casual people like me, I mean, you can get people that are going to be able to do this for free, of you sending them a prototype that are just happy to play stuff and have a good time doing it. Otherwise, in this case, put a rulebook up. I mean, a rulebook would answer a lot of the questions. So I'd love to see that. And I hope DMZ Games puts one up there because, as you can see on this, I've already got it saved. I had already saved it before I even did this video. So I'm intrigued by it that much because I do like me some 1v all games. So I really think you should check this out. This is, an indie under the radar game. Deserves your support if you like this sort of thing. I don't know if it's sort of like Nemesis-esque light or Lifeform light in that sort of realm because I don't know the detailed gameplay exactly, but if you're looking for something that might be a little easier, a little bit more straightforward, a little easier to get to the table for, what's the price point here? $49? It's pretty good. So check it out. There you go. Next up is Enigma Crime Scene. And again, this one's twice as Fun and Goal, another small indie game. And this is another twist on the Exit, the Chronicles of Crime sort of style of game. And they are offering you 4 scenarios in the base game that you can play through. And they've got a little bit more stuff. I mean, this is not app driven. This is more stuff driven with like a decoder and, the physical decryption style of things. And you're getting, for what would be essentially the same price as an Exit style game of about $20 per, scenario. And that's not even including the early bird. So, you can see all of the stuff, the monocle, the VR glasses, newspapers, passport, cryptogram, street maps, so you're getting all of this physical stuff that you're going to be using. It's not like Chronicles of Crime where you're going to be mostly app driven and scanning and more deducing up here. This is going to be physical representation of that. And so it says it's replayable. It says it's competitive, but also cooperative. also imposter mode. Now, I didn't look too much into the details of the different modes, but like I said, there are 4 scenarios that you can play through. The deluxe version includes, special box, special utensils. Okay. So again, how much do you want that deluxe version, which is going to cost you, literally double the price. So, I mean, honestly, the base pledge at the early bird here is probably a pretty good deal. The deluxe early bird is gone, but I'm not sure you need it. I'm not sure you would miss out on that much because it is literally double the price. They run through the 4 different scenarios here in the 4 different cities: London, New York, Chicago, and Sicily, and the newspapers in those. And then they run through a little bit of what the game entails with all of the different things that you're going to be searching for and doing. I mean, if you're a fan of this type of game, I really think you should check this out because it is definitely different with the physical components as opposed to a lot of the other, at least the Chronicles of Crime-esque side of things. That's pretty much it. I mean, you're obviously getting a little bit extra players here with the deluxe, so maybe it's worth it if you want some of these extras. I'm not sure how make it or break it those are, but for double the price, at least from my side of things, I probably would pass. But I think the core pledge, especially if you get one of the early birds, is definitely worth it. So extra scenarios, extra maps, I mean, all of that stuff. Stretch goals, there you go. So really an interesting another twist on this. I mean, these are becoming all the rage nowadays, and I know a lot of people love them, and they're easy to trade because other people want to get them. So it's got high, not necessarily keep value, but high turnover value in a positive way. So that is Enigma Crime Scene. Next up, the expansion from Paris. Again, I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I'm going to screw it up. This is a Kramer and Kiesling game that was deluxeified a couple years ago on Kickstarter in the first place. This is the expansion, as I talked about from Game Brewer last week, that is adding more of a good thing in terms of further real estate development around the Paris metro scene. Now, the nice thing about this Kickstarter is it appears you can also get the base game in the deluxe version as well, in case you missed it the first time around. I talked about it a little bit last week. The overhead, the additions to this game, it's just more of a good thing, not in a hugely expansive way, not in a huge overhead way, but just a few additional elements to spice things up to give more variability and replayability. You can see all the quotes right here from the various big name places, and you can see a little bit of what the base game adds. So all you're doing is you're adding these bonus tiles, and then you're adding new strategy tiles, which also give you asymmetric starting powers. So nothing overhead complex. The only question is this, as opposed to some of the other deluxe Euros that we've seen, or, Euro-style strategic-ish games, is this worth the $99 price point with the deluxe version? So what are you actually getting? Because the deluxe version itself is only $20. So you're essentially paying $79 then for the deluxe of the base game, and I'm not sure how that compares to the first Kickstarter. And the other interesting thing is, okay, well, what is... Oh, well, that's nice. Interesting. It's all in one big box at that pledge. That is interesting. Wonder how people feel about that have just the base game already. Like, can they get the big box separately? Is that going to be an additional cost? Like I said, you're doing these things. You're starting by adding buildings. You're investing. You're putting certain real estate around the city. And then you're going to be using that to maximize the bonus tiles and the bonus points that you're going to be getting in terms of how you're building this real estate in the first place, and even building some of Paris's most iconic landmarks. So this is just adding more of a good thing. They have the rulebooks up here, which is great. The rulebook for the expansion was on Board Game Geek, I believe, beforehand as well, and I glanced at it last week if you want to check out that video. But like I said, it's just adding those 2 main elements that we mentioned just a minute ago. You can play it online. And there's a bunch of videos from all those quotes that you just saw up top. So retailers can order it during the campaign. Interesting. Selling deluxe games below the Kickstarter price is prohibited. Interesting. How would you enforce that, by the way? Anyway, that's a whole nother side thing. And there you go. Shipping for a single copy. Well, if you pick it up, it's free. But yeah, otherwise, the deluxe for the base game is relatively cheap. The big box, though, is much more expensive. So, but it looks like it's a relatively uniform across the world. So, I mean, it is what it is. So, anyway, if you like this sort of game, this is definitely one to keep your eye on. Now, it's not gangbusters, but I think it's relatively well thought of. But I also think it's sort of flown under the radar. So, I mean, it's already, almost 2.5 times its funding goal. So if you like this sort of thing, I think you need to check it out. There you go, Paris and the expansion. So I'm going to mention this one. Just, it's indie, it's funded. I think some of you might be interested. This is USS Laffey, the ship that would not die game. Die? I think they're, double entendre there. But this is a war game that is sort of in the lines of a roll and write that is also a solo game. And it's going after the events of Pearl Harbor, and it is taking those and making you survive or try to survive the kamikaze runs that happen to the ship in a real life experience. And so you're using a roll and write to then assign certain parts and, basically to avoid getting sunk just as the ship did in real life. And it's relatively well tested. Like I said, it's not an unknown. This is actually a winner of the best solitaire war game on Board Game Geek from 2019. So this is not something that people have not played and not, tested out and tried out. This is something that is solid from that side of things. So if you're a war gamer, check it out. If you're a solo gamer, check it out. If you're a roll and write gamer, check it out. Otherwise, it's probably not for you, but I thought I'd mention it because it's already doing great from a funding standpoint and it deserves a shout out. Next up, Quest's Heroes of Sorcado. I put out a little preview, not really preview. They sent me a copy of the prototype scenario. No money was exchanged hands. They just said, hey, would you try it out? And I said, hey, I'll do a video on it. So if you want to check that out, I launched that earlier this week. The gist of this game is it's a 1 to 6 player fantasy-esque game where you are going through this scenario-driven campaign book narrative. And the point of this game is that it is a much lighter style of these campaign-driven scenario-based games so that it's very easy to get to the table. You can play it with anyone. The overhead and the rules are really, really straightforward and low. And it's just supposed to be a light D20 Dungeons and Dragons-esque feeling, but more of a campaign without the GM, if you will. And like I mentioned in the video, my biggest concern with it was just the randomization. With the die rolling and the chaos that comes from that, you can have good runs and bad runs with rolling a D20 if you've ever rolled a D20 for a game. And in some ways, the game allows you to mitigate, but at some points, the game also makes it a little bit tougher to mitigate. So there are points in which if you just roll bad, there's just nothing you're going to be able to do. And that's my biggest maker to break it with this was how frustrating is that going to be for you? Or, how... do you have a group that sort of fits this in-betweener between the super light dungeon crawl and D&D as well as the heavy side of things? And if you don't, the price point is great. The booklet's going to be $60 plus another 140 pages, and it's going to have a lot of content for the $60 price point. But if you're just not that market, doesn't matter, again, how good the price is on any game. Like I said with the first one, with the engineering one, with the electronics, it's a great price point for what it is. I think it looks super amazing, but I'm never going to play it and I don't have an interest in it. So it doesn't matter how good of a value it is, even if I could sell it for 30 or 40 extra dollars in the retail market afterwards, right? So that's not why you get a game like this. But it's straightforward. It's what you see is what you get. It's super simple to play. And it gives you a little bit of choice in terms of how it navigates with these characters. And, oh, look, there's my video. Haha, first time. Anyway, so that is what you're going to be seeing. You have these heroes that line up around the main board, and depending on how many skull eyes the monster has determines how many characters you use, and they splay so that if there's 3 characters or 3 eyes on the skull, you have to choose 3 characters, but you're starting with the character who is fighting the main monster. You have to pick equally on either side of the monster. So if in case of 3, you have to take the first one on either side. If there's 4, you could take 2 on one side and 1 on the other, use all of their stats to combine, and then roll the die to mitigate, as well as using potions and other weapons to kind of help out in that way. That is the nutshell of what this is. Upgraded pack for the tokens, a few miniatures, a game mat, and we'll kind of see how it goes. It's, at the beginning, it's, especially for an indie game without a whole lot of hype, it's doing pretty good. What is it going to fund at? Is it going to fund? We'll kind of see. Because again, it's not one of those games that I think shouldn't fund. I think it should fund. It's just the competition that it's going up against, like a lot of these games this week, there's only so much money to go around. So this is one I could see, if it didn't succeed, I could easily see this relaunching in a less populated window in terms of games and competition, and easily funding down the line either way. But I would think, especially with this much of a start, it's going to fund. So there you go. Quest, Heroes of Sorcado. Next up is Tussie, Mussie, the expansion collection for the base game, which is a button shy-ish game. That is 18 cards, and you have 3 different small expansions. The flowers, the greenery, and the ribbons. So ribbons are your share goals, as they say. Greenery is negative points, depending on how you feel about that, especially with a take that. And just more flowers. So Elizabeth Hargrave doing some great designing there. And this is what you're getting with the base and then the expansion. So I know, again, a lot of people like these sort of games. And they're easy to get to the table. There's low overhead, but they're still offering some delicious level of choosing. And it is sort of a I cut, you choose type mechanism where you're looking at the top 2 cards and then place one face up, one face down to the opponent, and they get to pick which one they want. I cut, you choose 18 cards. Each of these expansions is adding something like 5 cards-ish, something around there. Not a ton, but also just enough to spice it up a little bit. And you know, you're getting a free solo expansion as well. So, all in all, I mean, I don't think you're going to go wrong with a game like this if this is your ilk, because the designer, the pedigree, the knowledge of what it is, there's not a whole lot to wonder. I mean, you can't really screw up whether or not you're going to like this if you're going for it. Like, you either know at this point, hopefully, that you do, or you know that you don't. And, I mean, the price is good. So, even for everything, it's $20. It's easy. So, that is everything you need to know about Tussie Mussie, the expansion collection. Check it out. A lot of people are. I mean, it's a $20 game, right? It's raising $56,000. Anyway. Okay. I finally got there. So I'm down here filming a video, and somehow I have this huge, bite on my forearm that's itching. I'm like, why is my forearm itching? Anyway, sorry, side note. Tangent. This is The Witcher. We are less than 24 hours in. It is over $2 million, 17,000 backers already. So I'm backing right now. I'm waiting to get my prototype copy so I can get it played, so I can have some video for you guys out there and to give you my thoughts on it further. But what do you need to know about it right now at the beginning? Well, the beginning is, if you're watching this for the first time now, you missed out on the free 24-hour miniature that they're throwing in there. So I'm sorry about that, but hopefully if you're interested, you at least backed it, because you can always cancel. What do you need to know about it? It is a 1 to 5 player competitive game set in the Witcher universe, where you are one of said Witchers, although I think the expansions allow for witches, and you are going head to head, trying to slay the most monsters, trying to achieve the most victory points, trying to upgrade your Witcher with its abilities as you move around the map and fight these monsters in the first place. And the mechanisms in which it uses, I won't go into as much detail right now as I will in my video, but they are unique. Having played a sample round or 2 online with Lucas, the designer, I have not really done hand management like that, because the cards are multi-elemented. That's a word, elemented, but they have many features that you are using across the different mechanisms of the game. And so you're having to manage and mitigate depending on which you want to use at which opportune time. Now, the interaction, and this is where probably the biggest critique and the biggest criticism is right now, at least from what I've seen on the online rumblings and just my own experience with the very, very slight battle so far, is that battling is a little bit of a tricky situation. And then also you have dice poker, because dice poker is literally just that. You are using dice to play poker. And if you roll better than someone else, because you are rolling a lot of the time against the game itself, but someone else is rolling for the game, there is definitely that element. And it is poker. I mean, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And there's probably not a whole lot you can do on that side of things. And so if you don't like that already, that's going to be an element of things that you might not be able to mitigate and you might not be able to swallow. So you might want to consider not looking at this game in that sense. The other is the battling, because you're choosing between one of 2 things that happens as the person controlling the monster attacks. You get to play those cards and potentially do damage to the Witcher, and you go back and forth until one is knocked out. And the Witcher is choosing one or the other, and they don't really know which one is going to be stronger, so it's kind of flip a coin. And again, if that's not of your ilk, you need to be aware. Now, I have not looked at the solo side of things yet. I have not looked at the cooperative, but that is the expansion that they're throwing in with the pledge, whether it's the deluxe level or the regular level. Now, again, We have not seen all of what is going into the deluxe, and we know that there are going to be miniatures. So, I mean, that's the level I'm backing at right now. But I could easily see myself dropping down if the deluxe, and you know me, I'm not a huge deluxe person. I could see myself going down because I think if you're getting that expansion and you really like the game, it's going to be a better deal to get it still on here with all the stretch goals, especially. So I don't think that's really in question. It's not one of those that I'm worried about potentially like losing value if I pick it up now versus later. And I don't think that matters whether it's the deluxe. I think it's still going to be a better price point. So, like I said, here are the monsters. It's miniatures. I mean, do you need miniatures? No, the tokens work just fine. But it's adding that flair. And the other question, again, is what's going to be in that deluxeification. And they're going to be doing the stretch goals. And I'm sorry, if you did miss this, you can add it on. I didn't think you could add it on. But this is the one that is the first 24 hours that's added on for free. They've got a few videos here. I think Board Game Co. has a video down here, as well as who else? He did it with Quackalope, I believe, and King of Average, and Before You Play. So all of these big people. So I doubt you'll see mine on the main page, but maybe they'll throw it in an update. But we'll see. Shipping is going to be what it is. So here's the shipping, and it says estimated prices for the deluxe box. And so I'd be curious to see if then are they going to quote shipping less than that for the regular version? I mean, because it's going to be lighter, right? So that would be something interesting to note. Go on board, CD Projekt Red. Again, I don't think it's, based on my limited play, it's not something, again, if you're looking for something super heavy, this is not going to be of interest to you. But this is, I will say, it looks simple, but I think it's also very highly tactical just with the limited amount I played. And I can hopefully speak to that a little bit more when I put my video out in the next week or so-ish, maybe. About that. But let's see, how many days do I have to put it out? I have 16 more days, so hopefully it'll show up any day now, and next time you see a video and me talking about The Witcher, it will be that. But you should check it out. It's of interest. It's going to be near the top of the popularity list on Kickstarter for the whole time it's out, so your eyes are going to be on it. A lot of eyes are going to be on it, and we'll see what else it comes with. So there you go. Next up is Robot Quest Arena deck building. 4 times its funding goal from Wise Wizard Games. The interesting thing was, how was this actually going to look? Because it is a deck building, robot construction, robot battling, a la the old school Comedy Central, real life BattleBots sort of game. And the way they have done it, the way they have approached it, is you have your BattleBot in the arena, and it is a physical miniature that you are moving around through the use of your cards and to move, attack, combo, use abilities in order to damage the other robots. And so for each amount of damage you do to these other robots, you get victory points from them as they're like their health cubes. Those become your victory points. And the most victory points at the end of the game is who wins. But you can also use your actions during your turn or your cards to buy better cards throughout the game as well. So you're mitigating, do I attack and go for victory points sooner? Do I buy up stuff so I can combo and get more points that way? And if you get knocked out, you just come back at full health the next round. So it's not a player elimination style game, which I think some people may have been worried about hearing the theme of it in general. So the execution is definitely not of the lot of downtime that you might be concerned about if there was player elimination in a game like this. So that's about it. And you get the $49 base pledge, and you have the exclusive a little bit right here. And then you get these individual separate miniatures, expansions, characters that you can use, because all of the robots as well are asymmetrical in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses and their special abilities. So that is definitely part of it as well. You can see all of the exclusives here. And if you're familiar with Wise Wizard Games with some of their other stuff like Star Realms, I mean, it's not that it's like exclusive, like super hard to get, but it's also, not super widely available to a ways after the campaign. So you just need to be aware of that. So, I mean, 4 high quality plastic miniatures that you're getting. And I didn't see if they're, yeah, right there, full color. So you're getting them colored too. So that's nice. And there you go. The expansion that is coming with free, expansion. Oh, sorry, expansion that you're getting here. And then this is the card and tile promo pack that you're getting as well. That is free. There you go. Board Game Co. and Quackalope doing the gameplay. And then Rado, of course. And then the video from Shut Up and Sit Down that they did on Shucks Online. So, all in all, I mean, again, I like the innovation. I'm not sure it's for me, because I don't know. I don't get the sense that I'm a good target audience for this one. As much as I love deck building and attacking other people and take that, just the health points sort of as victory points, I feel weird about that. And I'm probably going to watch some of the video to see how interactive it actually is, but I could see myself being lured into it. I could also see myself easily passing on it just because it's not quite the style of things I was expecting. I mean, the no player elimination makes it high risk, high reward, and I worry that it's just going to be more of a slugfest and less tactical. Sort of like, you know, I just run up to you and we just slug each other like in D&D until one person falls over, and then somebody else comes and picks you off, and then somebody else comes to pick you off, someone else comes to you. And so that's what would be my only concern, but I'm going to have to watch a little gameplay video to get my final opinion. But if you're interested, that is it in a nutshell. Next up is Space Kraken. I talked about this last week. A science fiction dungeon crawler. 3 times its funding goal. This is a solo game with also multiplayer features, and it is a one-book, GM-less adventure in space, dealing with space monsters, building your own spacecraft, arming it, fighting, doing everything that entails. And they have this special terminology here that they call the cryptid game master. So you don't have to have a separate person as the one controlling things, so that you can play it solo in that way. And 1 to 4 players, and you can play it anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple hours, they say. So it's just how long you want your session to be. What is it going to look like? Being able to save it and come back to it. Very easy from that side of things, it appears. Setup is going to be very straightforward, and you're just going out and doing the story, and it's permanent achievements, and it's a roguelike game, so you get the explorative style of things as much as or as little as you want. It's coming in a couple languages. They talk about the worlds and what you're going to be getting inside the book, the trackers and the combat and all of that, the dungeons, how they're going to be different and how you're interacting there. So what's the price point here? Let's see. You can get the print and play, which is nice. The digital edition print and play. The standard edition here is $48. And the deluxe edition is $85. So you're getting a little bit of the extra accoutrements, if you will. And I guess the other question is how much deluxe or, stretch goals are going to be that way. Multiplayer, they talk about it here so that you can play it with other people. Okay, so a little bit of everything there. Achievement stickers, artwork. Yeah. Again, this is, I think this one really strikes me as a solo game for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be looking at this as a solo game. They talk about the add-ons. There's my video from upcoming last week. And a couple other videos. There's a written review that's relatively short. And the tutorial is probably the one to watch right now to get a good sense of what the book looks like and how you're interacting with the book. And more than a couple German channels as well. So if you're checking that out, there's a couple that are worth looking at here. And that's about it. So, Space Kraken, already, like I said, 3 times its funding goal. And it's only going to go up from there. So if this is your ilk, if you're looking for something new, different from a dungeon crawl, sort of right-ish campaign-style game, here you go. Next up is Forsaken Forest, a social deduction horror game. Now, I thought this one looked familiar, so I checked out the page. And this is actually like the 5th or 6th time that they've tried to fund this game. And so it looks like it's well on track to actually funding this time. So Forsaken Games, congratulations on that. And this is, again, like I said, more of a social deduction type game. And this is a little bit of a niche, nuanced theme. And it is, dark horror fantasy. Again, not a broad appeal for that, but social deduction as well. So what are you doing in this game? This is a game that is a little bit unique because you start off in 2 teams where some people are villagers and some people are these corrupted Forsaken. And the goal of the villagers is to get to a destination while picking up supplies, resources, clues, and abilities along the way. The corrupted Forsaken is just trying to kill more of the villagers so that they're the majority left, it sounds like, at the end. What you're getting is a lot of cards. It sort of gives me like the Magic the Gathering type of vibe when I look at these cards. The base game's $30, the expansion's $25, early bird special, there you go. So again, here's a little bit closer look at what you're getting. 21 different role cards. Now the Forsaken know who they are on each side of the team, and they know where they're trying to go. Here are the interaction cards. So like this one, choose any player, peek at that player's role card. So you're getting ways to interact, cards that you're going to be able to pick up, deck cards, artifacts, destinations, the board in which you're traveling through trying to get to your certain destination, and everything else that goes along with it. More rolls, more cards, more cards, more cards. So how you're actually playing, okay. Like I said, 2 teams. Your team affiliation stays with you even if you die. If the villager team wins, if any player navigates to the village, or if all the Forsaken have been killed. So there you go. They win if any player navigates to the void, or if the ratio of the rest of the living players is 1-to-1, or like I said, in more favor of the Forsaken. Deciding your roles, placing your destination cards, heads down, thumbs up, sort of moving right here. And then, adding a path token. So you're adding paths. Sort of reminds me of, what was it, Release the Kraken? Sort of that one where you're trying to choose and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, are they leading me ashore? Are they leading me to the Kraken? Are they, leading me to the pirates? It sort of gives me that vibe of trying to make sure that you want the path to go in the way you do versus somebody else, but how much do you trust them in that sense? Rinse and repeat. Then the forest takes its turn and plays a card that has consequences during the nighttime, and join forces to create a path in order to get to the destination. So, like I said, it's just rinsing and repeating this cycle, and until one of these teams is victorious. They have a rule book out there, so again, I give them a lot of credit for that, of having that up. And like I said, it's definitely unique. The theme is unique. The laying the path down is unique in terms of a social deduction game. I mean, we saw it a little bit with Release the Kraken, like I said, but apart from that, we really haven't seen anything else in that ilk. So hopefully, with all of this information out there, and with all of these videos out there as well, you can get a better sense of what it looks like and how it's played. Because it certainly looks like this is the right time for it, because it's already, 88% of the way funded. So if you're looking for something new or different in the social deduction side of things with this sort of theme, Forsaken Forest, check it out. Next up, we have Dice of Dragons. So you're rolling the dice, pressing your luck, trying to get as much loot as you can from the dragon without getting caught. So, what are you actually doing? Now, this is the interesting thing, because in this game it says the dragon rolls back. So what does that actually mean? Okay, you're getting a bunch of dice, the dragon dice, the tokens. Okay, great. So what are you doing in this game? How is this game played? Because I just said it's a little bit of a roll and press your luck. So you're choosing your asymmetric type of adventure. You're choosing the different dragon that you want to play against. Then you are basically just Yahtzeeing these dice in order to get the symbols that you want, and you're pressing your luck as far as you can go, as many times as you want to. The big caveat being that if you roll these little flame things, I mean, one, if you roll 3, your turn is over. You have to resolve whatever else is there. But you also have attacks, banners, energies, things that are going to either aid you or aid other players, or just do damage to the dragon. And so you go until you cannot go anymore, or you choose not to go anymore. Then the next person goes. Then the dragon die gets spun up to the next level. You get more coins, but he also does more damage. So when does the game end? The game ends when everybody's knocked out, or the dragon is slain if you have reduced it to 0 coins left in its vault. Solo game as well. You can play it online. And they got some stretch goals here if they fund. So social goals, stretch goals, a little bit of everything. But that's it. I mean, low fingerprint, low overhead, easy to play dice rolling, Yahtzee, push your luck test style of game. 3/4 of the way funded. Shouldn't have any trouble with 27 more days to go. That is Dice of Dragons. Next up, no, this isn't Legos. This is CastleScape, the deck building sort of area control in the style of era medieval age. Sort of a roll and build in that sense, but this is sort of a area control, build the walls and contribute to most of the castle and get the most victory in terms of who's doing the most for the kingdom. So already over 50% of its way to funding. Let's take a look. So $55 price point, deck building area control, like I mentioned. So what are you doing? As I mentioned, the king commissioned you, you build a castle, you have to vie for the opportunity to build the best part of it. You have to out-recruit, out-build, out-maneuver all of the other builders you are playing against, because the king is also going to be inspecting it as you go. If you get caught doing underhanded things, he's going to strip your guild of its influence and its resources. So you're going to be able to cut corners, but cut corners at your own risk, because high risk, high reward. What are you actually getting? Like I said, game board, rulebook, cards, pieces, cubes, tokens for the walls. How do you play? Play your cards, gain walls, get resources and recruits from the supply. Build said walls around the castle. Move the recruits to those walls, and then use more gold to purchase more cards for your deck in order to build more stuff. Clean up, draw back, adjust your infamy and corruption if you run out of cards, and then claiming these Baileys by enclosing areas within the walls to get them more influence and recruits for later on. King's going around and inspecting it. There you go. The rule book is right here. So like I said, what you're doing is on your turn, there are 3 separate phases: playing your cards, resolving the effects, and then cleaning up. So you're just going to be playing any number of cards from your hand that are going to allow you to build walls, get those recruits I mentioned, get more cards from the marketplace, draw new cards from your deck, or, you know, as I mentioned, the infamy and the corruption are going to play a role and allows you to adjust those levels as well. You play a card face up in front of you and you resolve it. And then what you're doing is you're preparing those walls and those recruits that you have. Now, this is where a little bit of the nuance comes in. So when you play a card that allows you to build walls or get said recruits, you place them on the card. But if you play multiple cards that do multiple things, you have to build all the walls first, then you have to place all the recruits. So it's not like you can build a wall, place a recruit, build a wall, place a recruit. You have to do all one and then all the other. Then you're doing sort of the cleanup phase at the end, whether you're buying cards right beforehand, you're taking any penalties from the back alley dealings that you may have to do, and depending on the placement and the timing, you may be triggering an inspection by the king as well. Talks a little bit about said back alley dealings, the marketplace where you're going to be buying cards from, what some contracts are for specific goals and bonuses, and then it talks a little bit more about things like the walls and the quarries and the recruits and sort of placement and how you are able to do them, a little bit more about the inspections, and then it goes just into the end game scoring. Here you can also see an example of the scoring when you start to enclose areas. So, I mean, relatively straightforward. This is not a long rule book, easy overhead from that side of things. So, what are we getting into price point wise? $55, $100 for the retail pledge. And, you know, I believe that this is an indie game. So, I mean, I agree that this may not be widely available in retail stores. So I would not be surprised if this isn't something that you see widely available unless somebody else picks it up. You're not granted that, and you can't bank on that, but I think it's worth looking at because it sort of is a twist on the era medieval age that I mentioned. And there's not dice in this case. So it's more of the deck building aspect. And we're seeing now deck building with more and more stuff. There's the price point for shipping, which isn't bad at all. So all in all, I mean, it looks solid. So I'm a little surprised it's not higher, honestly. But again, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's running up against some stiff competition with all of the funds being split between so many projects. So that is CastleScape, the deck building board game, and I think you should check it out. Okay, next up, from the people who brought you Role Player, Thunderwork Games, you have Lockup, the Breakout expansion. Now this takes a fantasy prison trope and adds the element of being able now to dig, as the illustration provides the example of, digging under said prison to the catacombs, trying to get more resources, trying to allocate your race of fantasy creatures the most points, the most resources, and the most influence. Let's see what this game is actually entailing. You can see it's already 200% of its funding goal. And this was really one that sort of flew under the radar, the Lockup original game. It's sort of a little bit of a press your luck worker placement game. So I'm not sure if that is the reason it's sort of had less acclaim. I'm not sure if the overlap from people who liked Role Player and cartographers just isn't the same as the worker placement crowd. I don't really know. Because I'm a little surprised that this one hasn't seen more popularity and isn't, you know, funding higher. Not that 40,000 is bad. Again, as you hear me say every week, 40,000 is 40,000 more than I'm ever going to raise in a crowdfunding. But as it says, secret passages into the prison, catacombs, fallen heroes, sacred sites, ghosts, and their treasures below to discover. So what are you getting that's new in this game? You get a new crew member, you get the catacombs board, you get the legends cards, more items, more goons, more tombs, more traits, more guards. A whole bunch of everything else with a little bit of new stuff thrown in there for those that are looking for not necessarily a ton of overhead. Sort of, if you will, the closest comparison I will make here, which is probably not terribly apt, but it's the first thing that comes to mind as well, is Lords of Waterdeep, where you're adding a board or two. You're adding just more spice, the variety of life in this sense. Life sentence. Anyway, sorry, dad joke. Inside the box, it's telling you all the stuff you're getting. Okay, they have a rule book here as well if you want. And the rule book, I mean, it's straightforward. It tells you what you're going to be doing. You're going to be getting more reputation stars by sending your seekers down into the catacombs below, dedicating crew to influence the legendary cards, creatures, people down there in the first place, and then by crafting items, recruiting more goons, and influencing said catacombs and legends, you want to have the most reputation at the end of the game. Reputation being the manner in which victory points are scored in the Thunderworks games, as in role player and cartographers as well. Shows you everything you're going to get, shows you the setup, gameplay. You have in the 7th crew token, the lights out phase that they talk about, and then the tunnel locations that you're going to be digging in, advancing throughout the catacombs, what's down there, what you're going to be doing, how you're interacting with these legends cards, and that's it. I mean, this is not, super complexity scaling in terms of an expansion. And so that's why I think it's more akin to the Lords of the Waterdeep, a Champions of Midgard in that sense. Now, is it going to change the way the game is played as a whole? No, I don't think it is. But if you liked it, I think this is probably, I don't want to say an essential expansion, but it gives me the feeling with those two games as well that they are better with the expansions rather than without them. A couple previews by some of the big names out there. Awesome. Some videos, some previews, talking about the base game, add-ons. You can get plastic tiles if you like that sort of thing. A little mini expansion here, available for $4. That they do that on a lot of their games, those little mini expansions. $19. Wow. That's a lot less than I was expecting there. $65. That's great. That's a great price. I guess what I wonder about is the shipping on something like this. But otherwise, that's a lot less than I was expecting for the content. And are they doing any stretch goals? I'm not sure they're doing it. No, they just do their thing, except for the plastic crew tiles. So they've added all the stuff upgraded, and there you go. That is Lockup Breakout expansion. Check it out. Now we hit up Path of Light and Shadow, the expansions, because it's expansion week, right? Solstice. And again, this is actually raising even more than Lockup expansion, and it's 2.5 times its funding goal, $50,000. This is by Stronghold Games, not indie board and cards, but they went with the Stronghold publisher instead because they thought it fit a little bit better with the brand. And this is an expansion to what I think this was 2017, if I'm recalling correctly. I'm usually wrong. And it is a very interesting combination of deck building and area control. The key component is you have this morality track, essentially, that you're being able to affect with every single action and card that you're playing. And the further along one side or the other, either the positive or the negative, the good or the evil side of things, you're going to get more bonus in terms of that element of how that style of side plays. And what is the expansion offering? Now, I think the term that they used for it in the first base game of these special, powered up hero character-esques is numeri. And the biggest complaint I heard was that the numeri, they were Kickstarter exclusive, a large number of them, which added a lot of variability because these are the guys that are the make it or break it's with the special powers that are all asymmetric. People that picked it up at retail, they felt like it was missing something. More like almost, I want to say like Blood Rage, but taken to more of an extreme with, I don't know if the balance it would be the same comparison with Blood Rage, but also just the depth of monsters in that sense. So what are you actually getting with this? And they're marking it as a limited edition. So what does that actually mean? Rado talks about it, limited edition. So they say retail is not going to happen at least until 2023, which is, I mean, you're not going to get this game until when? I'm going to guess sometime mid-2022. So March 2022, that's like 9+ months. That's not like a month or two like we see with a lot of the other Kickstarters. So that's significant. And the base game was not widely available at retail, or it was not a big seller. So sometimes not big sellers get marked down significantly and are still widely available. Sometimes they kind of get marked down, but then they also just don't have a lot of stock in the first place. If you just can't get it, you just can't get it. So what are they adding? A new region to the board. Encourages players to stray from their moral path. A new faction, so there's all sorts of factions. And then they introduce, again, the concept of doubt, which is the other morality, essentially equivalent in this game. More powers, more attack the megaliths, whatever megaliths are. unique powers and unique mysteries to get special powers, new player boards that talk about the different factions, faction tile cards, and then they're adding a solo mode for all of you solo players. So you're getting a bunch of these cards, the numerai, the characters that you're going to be upgrading as you get them stronger, because what you're doing is you're essentially exchanging them. So you get one as a level 1, then you turn it in for a level 2, and then you turn it in level 3, and there's only like one or so of these top tier, like level 4s or level 5s or whatever they are, and the numerai are gotten a completely different way. So it's a very unique, it's a very interesting, very different concept. I have not seen it replicated in terms of those elements in the same way in any other game that I've played. Now, I got rid of my copy because I realized that I did not like the area control aspect. That was my getting rid of Rising Sun and Blood Rage phase, because I really just decided that was probably the first game that really told me area control is just not my strong suit, as much as I kind of like the deck building side of things. So you can see the rulebook right here, and they just add on a little bit of everything, sort of just like Lockup did. You know, they're not adding a ton, but they're adding a little bit of every little aspect that's already there and amplifying it in a different way. And so both of these games, again, give me the same vibe of adding good amount of stuff, not adding an overwhelming amount of stuff, not making it too complex. I'm looking at you, Isle of Skye, with your first expansion compared to your second. And so it's just a nice feature. Now, this game has also been one of those under the radar ones, so a lot of people weren't even aware of it in the first place. And I think that's what you're seeing with a lot of the 50,000 in terms of backing right now. So I'd be interested to see what is the difference between people getting, okay, so 500 people there and 217 there. That's interesting. I would have thought it would have been a little bit skewed the other way. And I wonder, I have not seen it yet on the page, if you're backing at this higher level, are you getting the Kickstarter exclusives from the first game or not? And the last one is only retail. So let's milestones, promos. So, okay, promo. Now, it still hasn't said it. Hey, I was right, 2017. Oh, there you go. Here you go. You can add it for $10. Now, that's still a lot of money if it's not included in the original. All unlocked milestones. So, let's see. I mean, it doesn't look like it's included. Am I wrong? Anyway. Shipping is about what you'd expect. Okay. If you're not familiar with this game and you like those two mechanisms that I mentioned, you really need to check it out, because the people who like those things really like this game. Again, not for me, so it's an easy pass, these last two, but this one deserves a little bit more attention and a little bit more acclaim as well. So if you're interested, definitely head over here. Check out the gameplay. It's been out long enough that you can get full details on whether or not you're going to like it. So there you go. Speaking of expansions, because I wasn't kidding about it being sort of a semi-expansion week, Isle of Cats already over $500,000. And I have the original Isle of Cats. I am going to get it played sometime in the next week. Yeah, I keep telling myself that. Thankfully, I have 28 days to decide whether or not more Isle of Cats is going to be for me or not. But let's take me aside for a second. The first Kickstarter introduced the base game with some exclusives. It's from City of Games, Frank West. And this is adding more, a lot more, as opposed to the other two expansions that I just mentioned. It is adding a significant degree more in that extent. Now, what is it adding, though, is the difference. Is they're adding two big modules. One is the Kittens module, and one is the Legendary Beasts module, essentially. Ancient Beasts, I guess, if you will. And the question just is also, I mean, they're adding a big box as well. Like, this is one of those games, I've seen a lot of people commenting online, like, this is one of the ones where they're going, you know what, I'm really happy with the base game, and I don't think this needs more, and more might be more muddling than necessarily adding a well-needed addition. And again, I can't speak to that personally yet, because I haven't played my copy, even though I got it on the first Kickstarter. Anyway, no judgment, or not too much, because I know you all are in the same position of having games like that. Anyway, so the expansion that was on the first Kickstarter added more variability because it also allowed for a 5 to 6 player count. Again, it was the more variability rather than the player count. That was why I was interested in it. And this game, like it says, offers not only a gamer-ish, and that's how they sort of refer to it, as level of play. It also offers more of a family style of play, and it's also offering solo now as well. And so you get the deluxe upgraded meeples, and that's probably one of the bigger benefits of getting it now. The interesting thing is they say you can do it a la carte, but there are three main things that they're offering during this pledge. And the nice thing is they do break it down, and so if you're a veteran or if you're a newbie, you can really see what the differences are. Now, the big problem you can see, and I'll mention it here, is you get the Kittens and Beasts. Okay, great. You get the boat pack. Great. You also get the Kickstarter pack. But you can't, I believe, get one of those alone. I forget if it's the boat pack or the Kickstarter pack. But you cannot just get them alone. I think it's the Kickstarter pack, but we'll scroll down and get to it here. This is, as I mentioned last week, thought of as one of the preeminent, definitely at a higher skill and a higher level of complexity, polyomino games that's on the market right now in general. And its Board Game Geek ranking is reflective of that. Here you go, the three types of games that I talked about. You're basically drafting these cats from the island. You're trying to match them up in terms of families by color, as well as fit in some jewels, and try to score the most points on this oblong and oddly shaped boat. And the boat pack, in this sense, is now separate and is different shaped boats, because in the base game the boats are all shaped the same in terms of the setup. So there's some asymmetry versus being symmetric in terms of what you want to see. So that is a relatively low overhead change. But some of the others, I think with the Kittens and Beasts, people have been a little bit like, okay, is this too much? So, okay, Kittens and Beasts, there you go. The third module that I didn't mention is a lesson module. So talking about it over, and you know, the rulebook is right there. I'm not going to go into it because it's polyomino. You can figure it out. There's a couple nuances with the drafting and how you draft and the resources you need to use to draft, but that's what it is. So the kitten module itself is fill it with kittens. Each day the fastest player can now rescue kittens as well, and I believe you're getting 2 kittens at a time. The beast module, you're going to match these with the families that you want them to be friends with, because you can see around the outside of these tiles, they each have a couple different various colors, so you're going to be trying to match them and get bonuses that way. And then the event module is going to have more events and more things that you can do during the game itself that are going to affect you. So again, I think it's great. The boat pack right there, like I mentioned, the asymmetric types of boats. And this is how the breakdown of the compatibility between the modules and what type of game you're going to be able to play. Now the Kickstarter pack 2, again, you're getting these upgraded meeples, and they give you a big box. Now this box is relatively expensive, right? It is $37 to get the box if you get it here. $37 US, but the box itself, when you go down to the add-ons, I think is something like 40 euros. So it's more like akin to like almost $50. So you are getting it for less. I mean, and that's been the big thing with City of Games is Kickstarters, I believe, is they have less exclusives, but they have a price discount more in lines. I think if I'm right, again, you guys can correct me in the comment section, that the price discount compared to retail sometimes was more like Leader Games. Big box. I mean, that looks awesome. But again, as me, as a non-deluxe person, you know, I'd rather just cram it all in the box and just say whatever. And then they also take this game and basically port it over to a roll and write. And so you can play it as a roll and write as well. And there's a pledge level for that as well if you want there too. And they call it explore and draw, but I mean, it's very similar. Again, rulebook is right there. So if you're interested, all of this stuff is there. And they give you just a short synopsis of what you're doing. So, I mean, it's not even, you don't even have to guess with these. You should be able to look and get most of the information you need just from these pages alone, even with a little bit of extra clicking. You're going to get a promo pack there for the roll and draw. You've got some enamel pins, some photos. Okay, great. Rewards. And so this is, I think, what I was thinking of. So you cannot get the Kickstarter pack separately. You can't. You can only get the other add-ons, I believe, separately. So, again, not a huge deal, but just something to be aware of. You can already tell also as well that I have this saved because I am not sure yet. As I mentioned, I need to get mine played to see if this is going to be better, worse, about the same as other polyominoes that I have. I need to compare it to something like New York Zoo as well that I haven't played. So that is what I'm going to be figuring out over the next 28 days. And seeing whether or not I need more, I want more, I like more, or I'm good enough. So I think that's the biggest concern one way or the other. And they're adding almost everything else from the first Kickstarter as well. So yeah, there you go. Again, I don't think you can go wrong with it if you really like polyominoes. The question is just, do you need more of it? And if you're a new person or a late person getting it, it's definitely worth a look at. If you like polyomino, if you like tile placement in general, this is a very strong contender, no matter your preference. It's just whether or not, especially with these games, which one is right for you, and is this one the right one for you versus some of the others that are out there. So that is Isle of Cats, Kitten and Beast expansions. So next up is StarFrame. Now this is only a quarter of the way funded, but I mentioned it last week because it's taking a little bit of a different concept on the builder, the deck builder, the builder in general, I guess, for lack of a better term, using that term 3 times in the first sentence. You are literally like building a ship that is trying to escape this dying star system, and a alien has come and said, you need to get this hypermatter resource, and if you get enough of it, I will lend you the design and the ability to make this engine that will allow you to bend space and time and get out of there. And so what you're doing here is you're trying to get out of there with your ship faster than everyone else, using these 3 resource allocations, as well as choosing your hero, each with an asymmetric skill. And you can see here that this is the different frame, and you're going to be not only battling against the other players in terms of trying to be the first one out, but you're also going to have people or invaders attacking the station that you're on, where you're building your ship in the first place, that you're going to have to defend yourself against. And there's going to be various other skills that you're going to have along the way. You're going to be salvaging said hypermatter from the surrounding planets in order to bring it back. And then you also have the higher risk, high reward Abyss, which is a little bit more dangerous, but you can get more hypermatter there than elsewhere. So that is essentially the game in a nutshell. So $36. I mean, that's not a bad price at all whatsoever. Captain level 46. I mean, my name on the inside of the box for $10 is relatively more expensive. But I think the base game price looks great. They do have a rule section up here as well. And they even have a print and play playthrough. That's nice. So here is the whole rule book. I mean, it is not long. This is really easy, low overhead. There's solo, there's explanations, there's the gameplay right there. It's a little cramped, but it's a lot of words. But I mean, this is a relatively straightforward game in how you're going to these planets, going through, interacting with them, going through the abyss potentially, building your ship in the first place in terms of what you can have and how you're using those resources in order to build it. And it's just straightforward. It is what it is. There's not a whole lot of surprise there. I'm a little surprised, again, it's not funded because, again, this is a relatively unique concept. I haven't seen a ton of this, but I think it's definitely at a higher funding goal than I would have expected with 20,000. I mean, it's not high, but again, I think it's another sort of like Quest Heroes of Sorcado at this point. It's probably being hurt more by the plethora of stuff that's out there rather than the fact that it's not a good game. I think it looks solid, but when you only have so much money to go around, there are certain things that you're going to prioritize, just like I am. And so that is how I feel like this game is probably being, overlooked at this point. But it's interesting. Check it out if you want to see something unique in terms of the mechanisms, in terms of how you're putting that ship together and managing some of that gathering of the hypermatter. So there you go. StarFrame. Check it out. Next up is Azrah, War of Heralds. Now, I'm going to mention this one, even though it's less than a quarter of the way funded, just because it's another asymmetric 1v1 dueling type magic, sorcery, high fantasy style game where you have one of 15 different fantasy archetypes that you are drafting to a team of anywhere between about 3 and 5, and you are going head to head a la strategic dueling. Now, I'm going to mention it too because, honestly, I'm not sure in terms of from Red Duke Games. The rulebook is out there, so you can take a look at it, linked to their website. I wish there was a little bit of a playthrough because I'm not getting as good a grasp reading the rulebook here as I would like, even though it gives you the setup. It talks about the 2 types of resources that you're going to be using, the mana and the celestial gems, to unlock your guardian's potential, and then range and how you're targeting things. And I would just love to see this game in a video form of how you're actually playing it back and forth. And I'm also mentioning it because some of this art down here is probably some of the best art I've seen on Kickstarter in a while. I mean, this is fantastic looking, right? This is amazing, some of this art. So if nothing else, go check this out just because this art is terrific. Now, if the gameplay looked as good as the art, I think it'd probably already be funded. I'm just not sure. It seems relatively straightforward. I attack, you attack, using these two resources to do the attacks, to unlock potentials, that sort of thing. But I wish it had a little bit more than that, and I wish there was a video out there that I could see to see how it sort of goes back and forth. Is it just a slugfest? Is it very tactical? I know you can move your heroes to the back row to heal them. What else makes this different in the very crowded 1v1 magic dueling type hero-based game? Now, with the turns, it reminds me a little bit of Pokemon, the TCG game, because in the beginning phase, you're just attaching 2 of these mana cards to any cards in the front row, a total of 2 split however you want. Then you're grabbing one of these celestial gems, and those are the resources that you're just getting automatically per turn. So it does eliminate some of the overhead in terms of, the mana draw with Magic, where, or the energy draw with Pokemon, where if you just don't get it, you're kind of SOL. Now, obviously with those games, they're quick replayability, but it eliminates that concern at least, and it allows you to move your adjacent allies, escape if you want, and then sort of you're just trying to defeat the person quicker than the other person. You're just trying to defeat the person before they defeat you. There's a few keywords that you have to know. Overall, it looks solid, but I just wish there was a little bit more information. What's the price point, just out of curiosity? Okay, $23. That's a placemat. That's a $23. That's a playmat. Okay, $35. That's a little bit higher than I would have expected for it. The art, like I said, is tremendous. So, that looks amazing right there. So I give them a lot of kudos. Whoever did this art is a great artist. Well, how much am I getting, though, in the actual game? I have not... Did I skip that? Did I miss that? Like, what's the actual contents of this game? Because if there's only 15 characters, I don't actually see how many there are. It doesn't actually say what you're actually getting on this. So this Kickstarter page just needs a little bit more stuff. This is one you relaunch, you have a few gameplay videos of how it plays, of people battling back and forth, a few showing off of the actual cards, give me a component list of what's there, give me an incentive to also get it right now besides the playmats, and I'd say this one funds. Will it fund this time? Don't know, but I don't think it would have trouble if it did some of those changes in the future. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on Azrah, War of Heralds. Next up is the Summoning of Kramdar. It's only a third of the way funded, but reading through this Kickstarter page, I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that I thought were just interesting and funny. In a good way, don't get me wrong. This game is a 2 to 4 player game where you are members of this cult trying to summon this legendary beast Kramdar, and you're having to sacrifice cards in order to earn the most points. And you're just drawing from a deck and moving a little bit of pieces either on or off of the altar, depending on if you want to play or you want to try and force other people to play, because if they don't have the right card to sacrifice, then they take a hit of death, and the death marker gets moved down. But I just like it because they make some great comments down here. Again, price point, $30 early bird, $35 early bird 2. It's just an interesting concept. I just love some of the commentary on this. So, is Kramdar real? Legend has it, he was born in the depths of hell. In short, no, it's just a game. And then, do I need a cult to play? In short, no, it's just a game. So, just the tongue-in-cheekness, I just thought that was amusing. I thought I'd point it out to you guys. But it just seems like it's a clever little take that, a little bit of hand management, card playing, point gathering, using these as sacrifices to this altar to try and summon this guy, and whoever has the most at the end wins. So I thought I'd mention it. It's worth a little shout out. The Summoning of Kramdar. Thought I'd just throw that in there for you guys to see if you're also paying attention in this part of the video. So, we'll see. Next up, I know I don't talk about wargames a ton, but I talked about this in the preview video last week, so I'll mention it now as well. Fighters of the Pacific. It is, about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way funded. It is both via air and via sea, a war game for 2 people where you are fighting over the Pacific Ocean. And you are simulating previous conflicts that are known. It comes with 2 expansions that are simulating other well-known battles from World War II. You can either be the Japanese or the US in terms of the Allies versus the Axis, and then you get a little bit of everything. Now, again, I'm not going to go through the gameplay. I'm not going to go through the rules. This is well outside of my comfort zone or my ability to describe in a concise, precise manner. But again, Battle of Midway, Battle of Coral Sea, you're getting all of those markers and those tokens, and they're trying to be historically accurate in this in terms of the ships and the pieces representing what was actually there. So 45 euros is going to get you the core, 80 is going to get you everything. I wanted to give it a shout out because it's worth talking about. It's doing great. It's getting a lot of money. So there you go. Fighters of the Pacific. Okay, so that's it. That's the roundup for this week. Very, very full week of games coming next week as well. A couple that I am super excited about. Also, if you missed my review from yesterday, well, that's because that's on me. I may or may not have forgotten to take it off of private. And if you saw my post on the community page, I just totally, I went to it in the middle of the day. I'm like, well, that's weird. Usually I've gotten at least a couple comments by now. Oh, I didn't make it public. Okay, so anyway, it was a review of The Search for Planet X, my thoughts on it, everything you need to know about it. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Tomorrow, upcoming, I have a couple top 10 lists, a couple reviews, a lot of games on the queue. If you want to know some of the games I have on the queue as well, I'll be mentioning that at the beginning of the video tomorrow as well. So, there you go. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for checking out, thanks for putting up with me. Stay classy and have a great weekend. If you get a long weekend, that's great too. I don't, I'm working all weekend. So, anyway, see you around.